Hey everyone, Ethan here from WordTech, and I've got a review video for you guys today. I am reviewing the Rosewill Thor V2, or version 2. This case has been around for a long time, and it's actually quite sentimental to me because my first ever gaming PC build was done in the original Thor V1. So, of course, I'm going to go over the accessories first because it's fairly minimal. Now, these are found in a little cardboard box inside the case, and you get some screws, motherboard standoffs, zip ties, nothing special, no toolboxes, no real manual or anything like that. So, I mean, pretty simple on the accessories, but that's totally fine. Now, this is a fairly budget-oriented full tower case. It's got quite a few features, and I think it is a pretty decent value, albeit maybe a little bit overpriced, but that does depend on the sale price that you find it on, which it is on sale very commonly since this case came out a few years ago. I'll get to that more towards the end of the review though. So starting with the exterior here, I'll go ahead and start with the front. I actually think it looks quite nice. It is a pretty good looking case. You know, it is a pretty simple box case, so to speak, with plastic panels on the front and the top, but I think the design of it is pretty good. It's flashy, but not too flashy, so it'd be okay for somebody that's just doing a normal build, and it would be pretty cool for somebody that's doing a gaming specific build, especially somebody that's looking for black and red. I'll get to the red a little bit later. And on the front here, you've got 6 5¼ inch bays, and you've also got a external 3½ inch bay in case you want to put a floppy drive, SD card reader, stuff like that. You know, it's kind of weird to see cases still having that, but I also think that the innovation in what can fit in a 3½ inch drive bay has kind of changed, and so there are quite a few people that still use them for like card readers and stuff like that. So it's okay to include one, I think, but it does take up some extra space that could be used for maybe other things. Now, you've got a mesh on the front. Unfortunately, there's no real dust filtration. There's little micro filters kind of inside the 5¼ inch covers there, but they don't actually stay in very well, unfortunately. They're not gonna do you much good in the filtration area. And then down here where the main fan is, it is filtered, but it is not cleanable through an external removable filter. You can take off the front and clean it out using canned air that way. Also, the fan in the front is a red LED fan, and there's a little button down here on the bottom that actually allows you to turn that LED on and off. Now, I actually on my original Thor had an issue where that LED button broke. I hope that this case doesn't have the same issue. I haven't had that issue so far, but obviously I haven't owned it long enough to really know if that will happen. So just be careful with that, especially when taking out the front side panel. You don't want to break the wire or the connector. But it is nice to be able to turn it off because not everybody wants a big bright red fan in the front of their case. And other than that, it is all black, so it's nice to see that. Now, going up towards the top and kind of the top front here, you've actually got a pretty good I/O set here. A little bit old school, but not bad. Like I said, it's an older case. You know, it's not going to compare to some of the newest stuff that have USB-C or 3.1 or something like that on it. But you've got 2 independent fan controllers up here. They're analog as far as I can tell. They don't actually just have steps, which is pretty nice, actually. I like to be able to see that refinement of adjustment there, that level of adjustment there. Each one can control 3 fans separately, so a total of 6 fans, so you can have your intake and your exhaust separated by the 2 different fan control knobs there. Definitely a nice feature, I think. It's something that not everybody's looking for. Some people would rather have automated fan control, but it is still nice to see it physically on some cases, especially on a more budget-oriented case. Now, you've also got 2 USB 3.0s and 2 USB 2.0s. Of course, I would have liked to see like 3.1 or something, but like I said, this is a slightly older case. I'm not really going to knock at any points for that. Now, you've also got an eSATA, which at the time, you know, it's not so popular now, but at the time, that was kind of, well, eSATA was kind of what you put to make your external I/O more advanced. So it is nice to see that on there. You can connect an eSATA drive, even though they're not that popular. It was pretty good at the time. Now, moving on to the rest of the top, you've got a little bit of a rubber spot here. You could put some things. It kind of goes along with the style, but you could also throw a smartphone or something like that up there. No, you know, Qi charging or anything. Like I said, it's a more budget-oriented case, but you could put something up there. It's a fairly small spot, but it's nice for little doohickeys, or you find, you know, the occasional motherboard screw laying on your floor like all of us PC nerds do. You just throw it up there for the time being or whatever. Now, the top actually is completely enclosed unless you flip the switch. So there's a switch right here up on the top that actually moves the fins here and angles them upwards so that air can be exhausted out of the top, or intake, although you really shouldn't do the intake on the top of your case. But anyway, you can close them for more silence or open them for a more louder but better airflow environment. Now, there's no sound dampening foam on it. I kind of wish that they had implemented that, because the volume level actually doesn't change too extremely, although it does depend on the type of fans you're using. It tends to block out louder fans pretty well. It's just when you're trying to make it as quiet as possible that I think sound dampening foam would have done better here. But definitely a nice little feature to have, you know, when you're gaming or whatever. Go ahead and pop it open. Now, on the main side here, the left side of the case, if you're looking at the front of it, it's actually kind of interesting. So it doesn't have a big side panel that's just blank or a big window. It actually instead has these three vents up here that just allow a little bit of extra airflow, meaning it's probably better for a negative pressure case. It does have fairly good dust filtration on a lot of these things. Like I said, they're not really removable dust filters or anything, but there is at least something there to help keep some of the dust out. So negative pressure shouldn't be too terrible in this. And since it has all these ventilation ports, I think a negative pressure build would be able to get quite a bit of airflow moving through here with minimal fan. So on the side, you can actually fit a 230 millimeter fan or 4 120 millimeter fans. Now, you know, I would say 230 millimeters is probably what I would go with in that case, because you're going to get quieter operation and still pretty good airflow, and you're not looking for high static pressure when you're on the side panel there. You're just looking for as much air as you can, which will create a positive pressure environment if you have this fan here probably, which it does come with actually. I'll get to more of that in a bit. But anyway, yeah, it's kind of nice to see some side panel fans. It's not super common these days, but it is nice if you have an air-cooled build, especially, you know, that's exactly the type of person this is for. It's really not built for liquid cooling. It's much better as a really big air-cooled case. Moving around to the back here, there's actually quite a bit to talk about. So you do have 4 grommas here for liquid cooling tubes if you wanted to use some kind of external liquid cooler or something. That's kind of just something. They had some spare space. They drilled some holes there. No big deal. I don't think that that's going to be used in most of the builds that'll be put in this case, but I mean, it's nice to have them there. Like I said, if you have the space, you might as well do it, as long as it's not sacrificing structural integrity. Now, you've got a 120 millimeter or 140 millimeter fan mount. It is not dust filtered, just like the top. There is not dust filtration there, which makes sense. They're supposed to be your exhaust. You don't necessarily need dust filtration. Now, you've got 4 thumb screws to hold in the side panels. Of course, that's totally common these days, but definitely still a good thing to see. And you've got 10 PCIe slots right down here. Not 9, but 10, so quite a bit. And there's a reason that it supports 10, again, which I'll get to once we get to the interior of the case, but 10 full-size PCIe slots there, and then you've got your power supply bracket right here, which is not removable or anything. It's just a big hole for the power supply. And of course, down at the bottom here, you've actually got a removable filter for your power supply. So there is a removable filter on this case. There's one of them. It is the one right here, specifically for the power supply. Definitely the most important one in my opinion. The power supply generally is running in its own enclosed kind of area, and I think that it's really good to keep your power supply dust free. Everything else you can clean out, but power supply sometimes can be a pain in the butt to get clean compared to the rest of the case because they're so compact. So going ahead and opening it up, you've got again the thumb screws right here that allow you to just open it up really easy. This is one thing that I believe has changed between the original Thor V1 and V2. There hasn't been a lot of changes though, so you know, it's kind of like you might as well just get the V2. They just improved upon a few things and stuff like that, hence the reason that they didn't just call it an entirely different case. You know, honestly, I couldn't even find a direct comparison between the original and any of the reviews I read, any of Rosewill's own website. I cannot find a direct comparison to the old one. But the side panels are the kind of side panels that kind of swivel out. As you see, I kind of dropped that one there, but they do swivel out so you can pull them out. They're not the stupid little tabs that you have to push on the lock-in. There you see your first 230 millimeter fan. Pretty good size fan. I do like that Rosewill's using primarily large fans on their cases. It allows things to be pretty silent overall. You know, lots of airflow, pretty silent system. It allows your high static pressure stuff to be on your video card and on your CPU heatsink in specific. So you use those fans for the high static pressure, and the case fans generally are just to move the air into there. You don't usually need high static pressure pressure fans unless you have a massive hard drive array or something like that, or you're using radiators. Otherwise, the high static pressure is just needed directly on the heat sinks of the CPU and the GPU. So going in here again, of course, like I said, you have 6 5/4 inch bays, and you've also got at the very bottom, you've got that little 3.5 inch bay external. But do keep in mind that 6 5/4 inch bay is the 3.5 inch bay. So of course, you only have 5 and a 3.5, not all together. All right, so of course, you've got 6 3.5 inch bays right here, and they also support 2.5 inch drives, of course. They're not toolless or anything like that, but they're metal, they're pretty strong. I do like to see good build quality on a budget-oriented case. So pretty nice there, honestly. Nothing super special about them, but I believe that is a change. I don't believe the original hard drive caddies for the original Thor were as nice as these. And then here you can also see that second 230mm fan that has the red LED that you can turn on and off. It's right in the front here. It's the clearish fan. Now moving up to the interior, this actually, the reason it has 10 PCIe slots, as I talked about earlier, supports E-ATX and XL-ATX motherboards. So you can fit some pretty massive motherboards in here. So you could totally use this for like a server case or something like that. It is a pretty enormous case for the price. There are ones that are bigger than it that have better water cooling support and stuff like that, but it does support, again, 10 PCI slots and the full size motherboards that you can get. So you could build a pretty baller system in this. I do like the idea behind that. I do think that every full tower case should support up to XL-ATX, E-ATX. For your video card clearance, you've got 330mm, which is plenty for most video cards. It would be pretty rare to find a video card that wouldn't fit in here. In fact, I don't think I've ever personally seen one. So definitely, of course, that's what you would expect in a full tower case. You've got this whole area here before the hard drive caddies that you can plug in your video card and fit there. So, you know, nothing really to worry about video card length wise. I would recommend getting a big card though to fill up this kind of space, especially if you're planning to like show it off at all. Although again, it's not really a type of system that you show off the internals of. It's just the external design that we're looking for here. So if you go ahead and move to the actual top, and they include another 230mm fan, which is the biggest that you can fit in the top. So yes, they did manage to make it so that you could fit a 230mm in the top of this case, which is pretty cool. But when it comes to radiator support, it isn't the best. There's a decent amount of space before the motherboard, so I believe you could fit a fairly slim radiator and a fan, although fitting a push-pull system or something like that, or a really thick radiator, isn't really going to happen. But this isn't exactly a water cooling centric case, so totally understandable there. That was not the priority at all, and it doesn't need to be the priority at all. Now for options up at the very top though, you also can support 220mm or 240mm fans, or again that 230mm that they include. So they do include 3 230mm fans, which I do really appreciate, and then the 140mm in the back here, which is actually nice to see considering it supports 120mm or 140mm, that they include the bigger 140mm. So they can all spin at fairly low RPM, so you get a fairly quiet system out of the box, even though you're not getting super high quality fans or anything like that, and really good airflow considering how large they are. There's also a bottom fan mount location in this. It's in front of the PSU, so if you have too long of a PSU, it may be restrictive. I couldn't find the exact specification of how long, but you do have quite a bit of space for the PSU, so I'd say generally anything 1000 watts or less, you should be able to fit a 120mm fan up here. It does actually have a custom bracket that they mounted in there that just has these clips that you can actually just stick the fan in. It looks like it would hold on to most fans because it's the standard thickness of the fans is where the clips hang over. So it's kind of nice just to have a hot swap fan area down there. Definitely cool to see. I've never really seen case manufacturers do that before, but it's, you know, something a little bit unique, something nice. Now moving around to the back side of the case, or the right side of the case, where again there's a whole lot of nothing, as I said, with the side panel, is where you've got all your cable management room. Now you've got a pretty good amount of cable management space. I'd say you've got about a 1/2 inch here. It's not amazing, but it's not terrible. It's pretty good cable management space. You should be able to compress the cables fairly well, and I do believe that your 24 pin would fit, and you've got quite a bit of loops here to go ahead and put your zip ties on. So just zip tie things down real tight and you should be totally good to go. I would be a little bit worried about cranking too hard on these though, as they're fairly thin metal on these zip tie mounts. So just keep that in mind. You don't want to break them off. I have broken them off on cases before. None of Rosewill's actually, but definitely something just to keep in mind in general in case building is if these look thin, be careful not to yank on them too hard because those zip ties can be really strong. Now you've got lots of grommets here. These grommets are pretty high quality grommets. They don't feel like they're going to dry out really quick or anything like that. They are square grommets, but you know, they got quite a bit of fins in them, so they should cover up cables pretty well, rather than some of the bigger grommets where you push the cable through and they just stick open and it doesn't really do its job. So definitely cool to see there. They are a little bit flimsy. Some of them feel like they're gonna kind of come out easy. Some of them are kind of already coming out a little bit. So keep that in mind when you're pushing your cables through. Just kind of be slow and gentle so you don't pull them out, so you don't have to try and get the grommets back in, because we all know that's no fun. Now, of course, you've got, again, your 5 1/4 inch bays that I talked about earlier. They are all hot swappable. So that's kind of nice as well. Toolless, hot swappable, totally fine. And then down here you can see that fan again and your space for your hard drives. Now there's plenty of cable space for the hard drives, and that's something that I really like, because I think some case manufacturers get that wrong, where you've got pretty good cable management on the back side here, but when you're trying to plug in all your hard drives, all your cables aren't fitting, especially somebody that's maybe going with 6 hard drives or something like that, especially if this is like a workstation type build. You might have issues in some cases fitting 6 SATA cables and 6 SATA power cables, especially when most PSUs don't have 6 SATA power on one cable. So you've got to jam 2 larger power supply cables in there. So they totally got that right. So pretty good overall. So overall, my final thoughts on the Rosewill Thor V2 are pretty great. I think for a budget full ATX case that does have quite a bit of features, it's got pretty much everything you would want for a really nice air-cooled system, albeit I wouldn't really recommend a liquid cooling system in it, but again, it's not exactly built for that. And this was also came out quite a bit before liquid cooling was a huge thing. It was starting to grow at the time, but it wasn't really the priority of all the case manufacturers, especially ones that are on a budget. And you know, when a lot of full tower ATX cases can cost you $200 to $250, seeing this guy here for $150 MSRP, oftentimes on sale for $125, it is a pretty good value. I do personally think that if it was MSRP for like $130 and generally went down to like $110 or $100 would be a little bit more fair in today's market. Personally, I think that it's a little bit overpriced for today's market. At the time when this case came out, I wouldn't have said that, but now, again, I feel like it's a little bit like the price needs to drop, because honestly, it's a good case, but there's a lot of features that you know, newer cases have that are kind of missing, such as toolless drive bays and stuff like that. Overall though, if you like the aesthetics of the case yourself and you're looking for a full ATX case that supports full-size motherboards, long graphics cards, lots of 5 1/4 inch bays, and lots of hard drives, this is definitely one of your better options to look at, especially if you don't want a system that you can really show off. If you're just going to be doing full-on air cooling, you don't really care about showing off how clean your stuff is, and you don't really care about cable management too much, then this is definitely a really good case to consider, especially with that side panel ventilation and the 3 230mm fans and single 140mm fan they include. You get excellent airflow out of the box. You don't really need any new fans, and you can run most of those fans at very low RPM. So I'd recommend just getting a quiet graphics card and like maybe a Noctua or something CPU cooler, which would totally fit in this case, even the biggest ones that they make, and you're going to get the static pressure that you need out of those and still good noise level, and then you're just getting a lot of airflow from those 230mm into the case. I would say I give this case about a 7.5 out of 10. It's a very good case. Like I said, there's some things that could be improved upon. I feel like for the price, it's a little bit overpriced. If it had full dust filtration, you know, with the removable dust filters instead of having to take panels off and stuff like that, and maybe had some more hard drive bays instead of 5 1/4 inch bays or something like that, I would probably give it a little bit of a higher rating. But overall, the quality is pretty great, and if you're looking for an air-cooled system, then it's definitely something that you should consider. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and go ahead and open up the description down there. There's a whole bunch of links there, ways to get a hold of us at WordTech. You can also join our Teamspeak server and our Minecraft server to chat with us. We're going to be getting an Ark survival server up soon. I'll talk more about that in another video. So you guys should totally start joining and playing games with us and stuff like that. There's also a Patreon page down below where you can give a monthly contribution to support the channel. And I just want to say thank you, everybody. We're almost to 1,000 subscribers, and I really appreciate everything that you guys have done for us. Thank you for watching.